All right, so we just type in, well, first thing I like to do in Google Earth Pro is turn everything off. So we have a primary database, places, photos, roads, 3D buildings. Turn all of that off just for ease of browsing. Type in Muncie and search, and it will bring us down to Earth, parachuting, hurling through space and time down to our study area, close to our study area. Continue zooming using the navigation tools here on the upper right. And we'll start to recognize a few things in our study area. So the roundabout, at the time of this particular photo, was still being worked on. The Walnut Street streetscape, this portion was still being worked on at the time of this particular photo. So if we look at our timeline, Google Earth allows us to examine this site over time. So from 2016, summer 2016, if we go back in time, go back to 2013, you can see things look a wee bit different down there. Okay, no hotel, no conference center, no training institute. So very interesting if you want to take a look at our downtown over time. You'll notice that Google Earth wants to slant stuff like this. Look at this effect here. Notice how the north-south streets are kind of angling up. Fun little reference tool. We just go down to View, Reset, Tilt, and Compass, and it will write the plan view. Okay? View, Reset, Tilt, and Compass. So whenever you get the distorted angles there, View, Reset, Tilt, and Compass. I'm using our historical imagery button. It is marked by a tiny little clock face, and it's kind of fascinating, if you will, to go back in time a little bit and see what was around your sites, around your potential study areas. You can see huge tracts of land in different portions of the study area. And if we go back even more time to 2008, you can see all of this area. This is when Deferred Rain had just been completed, so their parking lot behind the Rose Court and Pickle Peach was just a large area before the park. Kennecon's Park came through. We go back into 2007. You can still see evidence of buildings that were along High Street and Walnut Street and the roundabout, the first roundabout being put in. Go back to when I was a wee lad in graduate school. It looks something more like this. So you can see several more buildings on this portion of South Walnut, no roundabout, all surface parking for the convention center, and the Radisson Hotel Rogers was still active at that time. So Google Earth imagery already, even for a small town like Muncie, there's still quite a bit of stuff in here. So that's one resource. As you can see, the month and year for each of these is located there. So different sources from USGS to Globe Explorer, Microsoft's Terra server, there was another one at the time. We can go back in time and into the 90s. Oh, how I missed the 90s. And see just how different, how many more things, right, are happening in terms of what's happening now. For Charles Street, though, you'll notice, just the amount of surface parking. And we mentioned while we were walking that there was a rail spur here. Here's the evidence of that rail spur. See that? So you can see sort of a ghost trail, if you will, leading into angled buildings. That indicates that rail cars did penetrate into the downtown in the form of a rail spur that would service different smaller industrial sites on this side of downtown. So that's fun. And any one of these might be of interest to you. So as you start to think about pulling imagery off of Google Earth Pro, you go to File, Save, Save Image, and it starts to pull up some options for us. We have 3 buttons here. We have map options. You can click on or click off any of these things, whether it be title and description, the legend, which we don't need. Scale we might be interested in. Compass is helpful. but we can scale this scaling here. We can see that 900 feet, this line segment here is 900 feet. That might be okay, but we also might consider showing that at 50%, and you'll see a much, much tinier reference bar, scale bar of 400 feet is there. And we can even set that, by playing around with the scaling there, we can set that down to a much more manageable number. I've got now this down to 300 feet. So in the lower right, we can continue to have a scale reference bar of our choosing of a size that's digestible to us. Resolution is variable based on the quality of the image that's there. But standard resolution, 1500 by 1003 pixels, 1024 by 768. A couple of HD proportions, and finally the maximum. Google Earth is going to give you a maximum of 4800 pixels wide for maximum resolution. And you can take a look at those. You can see they look a little bit different from each other in terms of their proportioning. 1024 by 768 is your standard 4:3 television or monitor versus an HD monitor, or the maximum there. I'm going to go forward in time now, back forward in time, and go back through the changes. And so we can start to get a reference for how we start to look at the downtown and think about our sites and whether or not they've changed over time. And go forward, and then suddenly the roundabout appears, the Walnut streetscape, the hotel, in addition to the Convention Center and Training Institute. Moving forward until we reach the summer of 2016 on this particular layer. So summer 2016, last segment of the Walnut streetscape. All right. Now, click on 3D buildings and you'll notice something different. And terrain. So if I turn on terrain and 3D buildings, something else will occur here. Terrain. Close that out. Close that out. Now. All right. So I've got to close out the historic imagery, and I've got to exit out of the save image options there. So just X out of that, X out of the historic imagery, click on 3D buildings and terrain. You'll notice this map looks a little bit different. Okay. You'll notice also that the hotel is still being worked on. So the two images, the reference images for today, present day, are slightly different. Oh my goodness, look at that. So if I click back and forth between the two of them, on that terrain button in the lower left, you'll see there's something different here. Okay, so here the hotel is complete. Here's that little tiny little park and fountain that the hotel guests can look at as they adore the image of their cars. And everything looks almost complete here. The roundabout is almost finished, and that South Walnut portion is almost finished. So if I have, but if I have 3D buildings and terrain both turned on, you'll notice something different. You'll notice that the hotel is still being worked on. Okay, there is a difference there. So that, and you also notice the colors are slightly different. And the fact is that we're looking at an image that's a few months different than the previous image. What also occurs is because the 3D buildings and the terrain are turned on, it means that I can fly over this thing and start to see things in context. So if I start zooming in, you'll see, you'll start to see the buildings in 3D. Okay. Very dynamic, different way of looking at the town. Okay, so this is Google's attempt to start to create some more dynamic mapping for American cities. And Muncie was added to the collection last year. So it's a very different way of looking at it. You notice that Google uses algorithms to sort of summarize trees as masses. So they look a little bit funky, but we can get a good sense of where we are and what we're looking at as we're flying over. And later on in the course, after we get into some SketchUp, I'll show you how to take a SketchUp model and open it up into this view, and we can fly around it and start to see your ideas in context. So based on your exploration up to this point, what parts of Charles Street have interested you the most?
I think 3D.
Sorry?
I don't like the 3D images.
Okay, well, click on terrain and 3D buildings. Those are both click on. 3D buildings and terrain. Just click them off and click them on. This example. First question I want to ask you is: are you in Google Earth Pro? Yes. Okay. Turn everything else off. Turn everything else off except for 3D buildings and terrain. Turn everything else off. Anybody else? Good. Not seeing that view. Okay, you need to close out of this. It's like the imagery. There we go. Close this out. And then save image mode, we can close that out. Now turn on, try again, 3D buildings and terrain, see how it looks. Just make sure everything's turned off. Okay, so there's a possibility of maybe need to reinstall Google. We're still in this other turn that off. Turn this off. Turn on There. Okay. So what parts of Charles Street have interested you based on our studies last week, based on your return visits to the site? What sorts? We mentioned that Charles Street was kind of like a transect through the heart of the city. When I say that, I don't mean that lightly, because believe it or not, Charles Street actually restarts on the other side of the cemetery. That's not part of our study area, but it does restart over here. So, yeah. So what parts of...
My cemetery. Not very good. It's just big.
Yeah, people are dying to get in there. This is a historic cemetery. It is quite nice. This gate is very, very nice, as well as the head house there. The Ball family tombs are sort of in here, and the veterans area is quite beautiful. It's in the back here, so do check it out.
Are they running out of room?
There's plenty of room.
Okay.
Plenty of room in here.
Yeah.
It's just that funds to maintain the cemetery are limited, so that's what threatens a cemetery is its overall maintenance, the lack of maintenance. You can see the ruins of the Chevy plant here. But as we get back into the Old West End, if you're interested in the western sites in my neighborhood, we're kind of in here. This area, this is the pocket park where we stopped. There's where I live here. We didn't go much farther than that. There are a few more historic sites, but not a tremendous amount of land unless you were considering thinking about this strip of land here against the Ontario Systems site. This is the former Meadows Shopping Center, and it's all it was bought by Ontario Systems Software, and so this was a department store back in the day. This was a pharmacy. There was a good Chinese restaurant there, lunch counter, different interesting things. This was basically where everybody in this part of Muncie shopped, and now it's all office space. But there's this available land on this side that could be interesting because it's where Charles Street terminates into Indiana 32 Kilgore. So that's available for you to think about. If you're interested more in the neighborhood scale, you're looking at potential infill or renovation of things, you could do sort of a neighborhood level thing. This is that war zone, no man's land, right? Look at this, all this surface parking from the hotel garage north all the way to the post office, GOP headquarters, to Beton Sanders Flats. right? All of this land here, a number of students have reconsidered or have woven together some ideas for this portion of it. Of course, this former church is now being converted into housing at this time. The Fisher Building, which is the former Muncie Central High School site, now being converted for Ivy Tech. Ivy Tech's new building will go in right here. So anything folks do in this area should consider the implications, long-term implications of Ivy Tech, making a more permanent presence on this side of downtown, as well as thinking about their long-term viability and demand for housing, demand for parking, demand for services and the like. Okay. Folks who have been more urban in their thinking have taken on sort of this central portion of Charles Street. So these two sites here, this was a 2-story building, this was a 5-story building. But also thinking about their long-term application on the streetscape, how does this alleviate some of the demand for parking in the central city? How do we do pop-up events and things like that of that nature? What is the long-term viability of all of this surface parking, or even this building for that matter? Although brutalism, we love brutalism, right? Right, too. We love the brutalism. Okay. But there's some opportunity here for infill, urban scaled infill, and then when we get to Mulberry Street, right? Oh my goodness, right? We have all of this parking, all of this parking all of this land down here to consider. So, yeah.
So, forgive me if this is a demo, but can I use the site of the old Rivoli Theater where the Minestra or opposite?
So this building here.
Sorry, yes. It's one street over. I didn't know if that would.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Yeah, my grandfather used to come to this.
Yeah, it's fine. Traveling east, right? We get back into the East Central neighborhood. Those are some of the things different issues that we face there. So on our walk, we went by the historic McDonald's sign, Rally's restaurant, went into the neighborhood, and we stopped here at this park. So and then there's a daycare center right here. We turned back towards the Neely House, which is our new fine dining facility under construction, and we returned back to downtown. But this is more of our social services arm. So we have the Open Door Health Center, we have the YWCA, we have the Alpha Center Daycare, which is right next to the Episcopal Church. We have daycare for children. We have park. We have the day school at St. Lawrence. We have their charity work that they do out of that lot, and as well as all of the land around St. Lawrence. So St. Lawrence neighborhood, this is the Catholic Church here, the corner of Pershing and Charles Street. We've got available lots, quite a bit of land, right, to work with here if that's of interest to you. Quite a bit of land over here until Charles Street terminates at this eastern end. Okay. Now, yeah.
Can we go to the very end of the street, or are we supposed to stop at the end, please?
Here?
Can we go to the end? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So a couple students last year looked at this area. So they wanted to think about the church as an anchor, and so they started to think about this general area. Right? So whatever part of Charles Street floats your boat, but that's going to be your study area for the rest of the exercises in the semester. Right? So some of you will probably start to coalesce on either basically a downtown core, a near east, a near west, far west, although nobody's done Kilgore yet. Nobody's gone that far. A near east or a far east. So those are essentially, if you started to break up the Charles Street corridor into chunks, that would be how you might start to approach the exercises in the course. Okay? No two of your projects will look alike, right? You probably saw that, in terms of the examples I've shown you, no two projects are alike. It's what you want to do with it. So you want to take on a social services aspect, you want to go on to an urban ag or urban food aspect, you want to go into commercial real estate aspect, we can go into urban housing or downtown vitality aspect. Last year we had some pretty cool entertainment district ideas that came out of different land uses, or a long-term Ivy Tech strategy. As you start to think about these two buildings basically becoming, coalescing around an Ivy Tech urban campus. Okay? So, in order to do that, we need to reset the tool and compass. So again, view, reset, tilt, and compass. Go back to this view here. I want to think carefully about which view I'm working with in terms of which one is more current. I think that if you click off the terrain, this two-dimensional view is actually more current. And again, we mentioned that you can see that the hotel is finished and a little park in front of the hotel is there. In that 3D buildings view, it's a little bit older. It's just a few months older. It's a little bit more colorful, but it is a little bit older. So if we're just doing a 2D straight down plan view for this first diagram, we need to consider the source imagery in terms of what background photo we use. GIS might have something else for you, so that's a very good tool. I'm going to turn off the 3D buildings. I've got these, I don't know where these floaters came from. I've got a floating YMCA here, and so I need to turn off the 3D buildings for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You might notice the incredible floating YMCA kind of floating.
Yeah, it was on mine too.
Yes, yeah, I think those are in the 3D warehouse, and I think they might be just part of the database now, but they are no longer geo-referenced product. You can see too, there's something going on in the park, which is nice. So, anyway. Okay, so then zoom in on the area that you are interested in. Just want to zoom in to that portion of the site, and I got to reset. Got to keep resetting my tilt and compass so I get it just right. Muncie's grid is about 1 degree off, which is really annoying, but that's the way it is. See the rail spur? See that? See what's left of that rail spur? It's kind of interesting. That does show up on Sanborn maps historically, so if you can see those on Sanborn maps. And then I go to File, Save Image, and then I go into the map options. So I want to turn on or turn off these different map options. I'm interested in the scale for sure. I'm interested in the compass, but this scaling, again, this percentage here will make the scale and compass appear differently. So I really want you to play with that and just until it gives you what you're looking for. And you can see this tiny, tiny little scale over here, this tiny, tiny little compass. So, because I'm at the maximum resolution, 4,800 pixels, I may need to scale that stuff up. It's just part of the idiosyncrasies of the software. So if I scale those up to 200%, I can see now a much larger north arrow and compass and a reference of about 300 feet. I'm going to turn off the title description, legend, all that, and then I'm going to save the image. I need to give it a name. Muncie 2018 background high-res. This is going to be a big file. So it's now generating it. And it's going to bring in this north arrow and this scale.
Can I ask why when you set your scale at 100% or 200, it had 300 feet? And
Yep.
mine's at 100, it says 400 feet.
Yep.
Okay.
It's just based on how you zoom out onto the area.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all going to be a little bit different, just as long as you have some sort of reference. You need some sort of scale reference because when you take this image into other things, you need some reference to scale married to the image.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you can get things off really fast. So when we take this into SketchUp, we take this in Illustrator, it doesn't matter where we take it. I really want that little scale bar, whatever it is, to be married to the image.
Okay.
So, but you can play around and see that different percentages will yield different results. This is now a 200-foot scale bar for me. I might just actually go with that. So 200 is a nice round number. So I'm going to save the image again. And we are now exporting a high resolution image from Google Earth using the most available summer of 2016 image that Google Earth has. If, however, you weren't interested in that, and you were interested in more of a 3/4 view, which could be fun, you can export any one of these 3D perspective aerial images. But for our intents and purposes, by the way, it's intents and purposes. It's not intensive purposes, right?
Yes.
Right, good. It's 2018, we finally figured that out. There are different images embedded in this historic imagery as well as this 3D building imagery that you might want to use later on. All right, back to Canvas. Please download a few arrows for Adobe Illustrator and a handy template. Please download those to your desktop now. And we will open up Adobe Illustrator. I'm so excited. So the file open. Okay, so I've opened Adobe Illustrator and I've opened up this handy template. And you'll notice it has a certain distinct look to it, right?
What's the new document?
So if you go to Canvas,
In the zip file, sorry.
so if you go to Canvas, this is a handy template, this is an AI file. The arrows are a zip file. You do need it to unzip those. Okay. Just download those. Yes, this is a zip file. So that goes to my desktop, and I find it in, find the things, and then I have to a folder and go, but okay. Open up that Illustrator file and see how it looks. Does it look like mine? Yes? No? Maybe so? Catch a tiger by its toe? Because I've created a few things for us to work with. The first is that this grid is turned on. That doesn't exist on the document. That only exists in Illustrator View. And if that's annoying, you can turn it off, but right now, the grids are turned on because they're a nice way of referencing how images come into Illustrator, as well as moving them around and sizing them and making relationships and things like that. Okay? Everybody have the Illustrator file open?
Is it the handy template?
Yep,
Okay.
that's the one. Please pick up the text tool over here, our toolbar, and click on the title, and we're going to modify the title. What is a good name for this first map?
First map.
Photo inventory reference map.
That's me.
It's nice, yes. He's nice. All right. Okay. So that's just accepting the font and the color and everything that I've set for you in this. We have a north arrow here, which can be rotated if necessarily. We've got a beginning of a scale bar, reference bar here, that we will then adjust according to our the map that we bring in. All right. Now, we go to File, Place. In the Adobe world, when you bring in an image, it's File and Place. This is true for InDesign, Photoshop, and otherwise. So we need to bring in our brand new high-res image. Place. Boom. Okay, so it's really big. So grabbing the quarter anchor and holding down the Shift key, I'm going to size this down a bit. The Shift key in the Adobe world keeps your object, whatever it is, proportional. That way you don't stretch things. So I'm going to grab this and put that into that intersection. And I'm going to pull it up now. Okay. And I'm going to delete away that rectangle because I don't want it.
So we place it, and then what do we do?
It's going to be really big, so you want to grab a corner and while holding down the Shift key, shift it down in size until it fits generally on this artboard. In Illustrator, this is referred to as an artboard. But you have to hold down the Shift key in order to preserve the proportionality of that background image.
Yeah, that didn't work.
Didn't work at all?
I have like a whole bunch of text for my picture now.
You have to click on Save Image, not that option.
Okay. All right. What is that? That's fascinating.
Should I revert it?
What is that? That's awesome. That's the Matrix. We're in the Matrix now. So just want to try placing it again. That was awesome. Okay. So if I have this thing, and I come down here and I grab my little magnifying glass. This is the zoom tool. I'm going to zoom that down here. And I'm going to grab this little reference bar, which right now is all grouped together. Oops. It was grouped together. And I'm going to carry it up here. And then using the Shift key, I'm going to pull that up like so till it matches that. Okay. Now, this total is 200 feet. What's halfway? What's half 200 feet? 100. What's half? What's... How? It's roughly a third, isn't it? No. Okay. I can make it bigger. I can actually make this thing bigger. It's just a little bar scale that I built. So we can actually, what I'm going to do here is just, I'm going to slide this line right here so it's about halfway. Or I can actually bring it up. I mean, it just depends how big your bar scale needs to be. If I bring that one halfway, then I know that it'll be move that to 0 now. So I know that depending on how I reference this bar scale to what Google Earth has produced, I can estimate a value for that. So I click on this little X. the text tool to modify that little X. I'm going to call that 100. This bar scale is a group at the moment. So I can pull that back up here, and I can object ungroup it. I can actually modify the thing now and kind of make it match exactly what I want it to do. So I'm just going to customize it to that 200-foot thing there. See how I'm doing that? And that's roughly 100 foot, this is 200 foot, then this is probably 25 or 30 foot. So that, by ungrouping this, I can slide this around and then I can make it a group again. So by clicking and using the shift key, I can click those two objects again, regroup them, and now I've got a customized bar scale. 100. Click on that little text there, copy it, paste it in front, move it over. That's now 200, so I just change the value of that. Now your map has a reference scale. Google Earth already gave you one, but if there are other values that you're interested in, you can grab this bar scale, ungroup it, pull it apart, change it, and add more values as necessary. Why is this important? Because any designer who picks up your map in the future will want some sort of reference scale in order for them to make drawings from it. Or we might take your map into SketchUp and we might scale a SketchUp model to your map. In any case, that map needs some sort of reference scale. Okay? In every GIS map that you make, there should be a reference scale somewhere on it, just so that that document is usable in the future. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out to fit all in window. And I'm going to take a look at some of these arrows that we've made here. So we've got curved arrow, white, curved arrow, medium arrow, black, thick arrow. And these are a mixture of PNG files, Adobe Illustrator files, SVG files. SVG file is simplified vector graphic. Simplified vector graphic. That is a file type. Very good. Very good. Simplified vector graphic. AI file is an Adobe Illustrator file. PNG file is a portable network graphic. Okay. Simplified vector graphic is a vector image. You can make it as big as a billboard or as small as a thumbnail, and it will retain its properties entirely. A PNG is a pixeled image. That is like a photo. If you stretch it, it will get pixelated. It will not work well. An Illustrator file is already a standalone Adobe Illustrator file, which we can then bring in to an Adobe Illustrator document and modify it. So if we pick one of these arrows, let's say thick arrow white. I just double click on that, it will open it in Illustrator. You can see it's a little bit difficult to see, but I've got the grid turned on so we can go, oh, there's the arrow and here's this. So, and there's, the arrow is kind of right there. It's in two pieces, like so. So that's something we can grab. If we just select the whole thing, we can paste that into our new document. That's an option for you. Another option is to place one of these arrows. So I go to File, Place, and I go to my Few Arrows folder, and I pick out arrow 1, and it places it now as a default as a black, thick black arrow right on top of my document. Okay. Now, I can modify that. If I look into my top row in Illustrator, we have a couple of options for us to modify this graphic. We have the fill menu here, and we have the stroke options. In the Adobe world, every object has fill and stroke. Fill and stroke. Fill is the color in the negative space. Stroke is the line that defines the figure. So if I were to make this arrow red, fill, and black stroke, it would be a red fill arrow with a black line around it. Yeah. Okay, did you download that? Where are you? You are in perspective mode. There we go. Always make sure it says record before you walk back up to the front. Right. So if we've imported an SVG file, I can modify the fill using preloaded colors or standard colors or otherwise. Whatever we think starts to read against the colorful image that's there. So these do have to stand out. And so you want to think about colors that are potentially readable. You can bring in any swatch. Illustrator calls them swatches. Okay? Just like interior designers have swatches of carpets and swatches of wallpaper or swatches of paint. You can pull in all these libraries, and you can then start saving little file folders of your swatches, or just go into the global process and start bringing in libraries. But eventually, you're going to want to build up a few libraries or start getting comfortable with some standard colors. I'm pretty comfortable with this red arrow here, I guess. I picked a black stroke for that. And then the stroke option is what we call the thickness will be the stroke weight. And you can see if you build up the stroke weight, these things, plus you can get pretty thick. If I scale that arrow down, the stroke will remain thick. So it's pretty thick right now. But let's say we get comfortable with an arrow that will work for us. We can rotate that now. We can start putting these things in some form of orientation. Why is the arrow orientation potentially important for this map, based on what the assignment says?
The direction of your photo.
Yeah, so the direction in which I took the original photo will help our audience understand the portions of your photo inventory. So remembering that stuff is important. So taking notes or using an app that helps you remember where you took the photos, like Traveler or another app, can actually help you assist you in your inventory. And I think that might be a comfortable size or a comfortable thing. So I will simply I'll do an edit, copy, paste in front, and it will give me a duplicate. And I will rotate that one around, edit, paste in front, and we'll start moving that around. You might notice that the background image gets annoying. It wants to keep moving and things like that. If you ever get annoyed with something, you can click on the object, you go to Object, and then you go Lock. And you can lock that down, that selection down. And you can see now it will not move. So any background image in Illustrator, you can lock it down and it will not move. All right. The example I showed last week had two different types of arrows. What did those arrows do? What do they mean? two different arrows mean? The example I showed last week.
Like the historic photo? or the-
Historic photo, the direction, general direction or assumed direction of the historic image versus the image that you took. Alright, so right away there may be a logic to two different sets of arrows on your photo inventory. Maybe a logic to that. No two of your maps will look the same, right? Because it's based on where you found photos, where you took photos, and what your general study area will be. Where you think you want to work this semester. Okay. Now, that's general. To make those more specific, we need to number them, don't we? So I'm going to grab the text tool here. I'm going to make sure that my color, my working color is white, probably white at this point. Text tool, I'm going to hover over one of my arrows here. Oops. Make sure it's big enough. 36 points might work. And I'll just hover that number right over the arrow. Then copy that. Paste in front. And, oops,
Command Z.
I need to select that. Over, click on it, modify it, and just give a little number to the arrows. All Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign use layers as well. So if you feel like you need to separate this information in a layering system, that's available to you as well by opening up the layers menu, or the layers window, I should say. And so file management might be, and layer management might be interesting for you. You can see a bunch of layers here from a previous diagram that I based this on. So there's a bunch of layers already built in. I'll show you that example here in a moment. But so you can get rid of those. But if you feel like you need to manage these things on different layers, that's open to you as well. Otherwise, they can all be on the same layer. It doesn't matter. But if you feel like this information is getting heavy, then by all means, you can isolate these different things on different layers. So let me show an example of a map. So this is a diagram I did in Illustrator of the proposed mounds, Greenway and Anderson. So this is, after this module, this is sort of where we'll head in terms of different objects that can be placed on a map, different transparencies to highlight different land uses or different regions, different arrow types, line types, arrowheads, line types, free brush painting, in which we'll go, whoa, and Illustrator will go, kind of even it out. We'll connect arrows to existing lines. We'll kind of join them together so they actually work together. But in our next module, as a sort of a preview, I'll show you how to do all this in Illustrator. So we'll use some of the same steps we did today in terms of bringing in an image from Google Earth, and we'll start building up information from that. But for now, just to get back to this module, our first map is really a photo inventory map, right? It's a reference directory of the historic imagery and the new imagery that you took for that. Is anyone planning to reference Sanborn maps in their document? So one area of interest to you might be the general area that Sanborn map covers, or if you use just a portion of the Sanborn map to say, I'm really interested in that particular area, or if you want to bring focus to one area. Let's go with the pen tool. With the pen tool, I love the pen tool. I'm going to pick a color now, and I'm going to pick a stroke weight. So if you need to bring emphasis to one district or one portion of this map, whether it be referencing a Sanborn map or referencing the study area that you think you're going to be working on, if we pick the pen tool, it's this little fountain pen over here, and we pick a point, and then a second point, and then another point, and then another point, and then another point, and then another point. That will start to bring about a finite area that at the moment is quite solid. Okay? But when I click on the object now, all the previous options that are available to me are there. So I can pick the color, I can pick the stroke option for it. I can pick the stroke weight. I can pick the stroke style, which there are options for those. I can pick the opacity of this. There. Okay. So if you want to bring emphasis to one particular area in this map, this is a way to start to draw a shape over this and start to bring emphasis to that. So I bring down the opacity to like 50% or even 40%, and it starts to graphically bring emphasis to this particular area. With the object still emphasized, I want to go now to the stroke menu. This is in the right-hand side. There's these selections of menus here. I go to the stroke menu, and I can see right now that the weight of this is 16 points. We have corner styles. We have the option for a dashed line. And I have a 6-point dash in between. That's now a 6-point gap. This is how we make our stroke lines, these fancy dashed lines. Okay. This is also where we attach arrowheads to. So if you want to make a brand new arrow, you do it under the stroke menu. This guy needs to be above it, so I go Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. It's now front. And I slide this back. So for any reason you want to make an emphasis on your map, then Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. You can float a transparency or float a district highlight underneath your arrows for any reason. Okay. Other questions? We are right on time, by the way, which is great.